Okay, for this video, I wanted to talk about the Form 1065 Schedule B-2. The B-2 is included with your 1065 if you, as the partnership, are electing out of the centralized partnership audit regime. So I've got a sample B-2 in front of us. Not every 1065 is going to need this. It's only the ones that are including this election. But I've got a sample in front of us that we'll walk through in a slide here, which covers some of the background on this. What type of partnerships are eligible to make this election, why you would want to do it, or maybe not do it, and what are the implications either way. So a bit of background here. In 2015, the government passed the Bipartisan Budget Act, or the BBA for short. And what this did was, beginning in 2018, the BBA allows the IRS to conduct audits of partnerships, that's the 1065, and if there's a tax deficiency, the IRS can assess the deficiency directly to the partnership, which means the partnership has to pay the balance owed. So, for example, if they audit a partnership return and they find that the partnership understated its net income, then they know that all of the partners that reported the income on their K-1s or with their K-1s on their 1040s paid less tax than they should have, for the most part. And so what the IRS can do is they can impute a tax liability on the partnership directly, and the partnership has to pay the tax. Now this is significant because under the prior rules before the BBA, the IRS could audit the partnerships, but it could not collect any tax directly from the partnership. It had to go after the partners. Which makes sense, right? I mean, ultimately the partners are the one paying the tax. So if the IRS finds that the income was understated, they need to chase the partners and not the partnership to get this tax. But that was really cumbersome, right? So they passed this to try to make it easier for the IRS to collect past due tax debts or understatement of taxes, rather. So, but there are options to elect out of this audit regime, and that's the discussion point of this video, right? The Schedule B-2 and electing out of that centralized audit. So who's eligible for this? Well, you have to be a partnership with 100 or fewer partners or members, and you have to have eligible partners only, right? So the eligible partners are individuals, S corporations can be partners, C corporations can be partners, certain types of foreign corporations that file 1120Fs can be partners. Really, what cannot be a partner in a partnership, if you want to make this election, is another partnership. Okay, so if you have a partnership and then one of your partners is another partnership, forget it. It's not going to work. And the idea being the IRS wants to know precisely who are the owners in the partnership and who is potentially liable for the tax year. If you have multiple tiered partnerships, then you just never know where the bottom is. You can have a partnership with another partnership in there, and then there could be 1,000 partners at the end of it. So the IRS doesn't allow you to have this election if your partnership has another partner that's in the company. Okay, so what are some of the benefits to electing out of this regime? Well, frankly, the IRS is less likely to audit you. That's a reality. And think about it practically here. If you elect out of this regime, then it means that if the IRS audits your return and they find a deficiency, they can't impose the tax owed on the partnership directly. They have to revert to the old rule, which says if there's a deficiency, I've got to go after the partners individually to collect this tax. And that's difficult, right? It's difficult to chase all the partners and get those taxes owed. It's obviously much easier to just go after one party, the partnership. And so that's why it's generally beneficial for a partnership to elect out of this centralized audit regime. Okay. Now, one of the other benefits is it protects new partners that come into the partnership. So what's an example of that? Well, if we look here, the XYZ company files a 1065 for 2019, and it does not elect out of this centralized regime, okay? So then in 2020, we have John comes in as a new partner. The IRS audits the 2019 1065, and it finds that there's an understatement of income, which results in taxes owed of $15,000. Now, because the partnership did not elect out, the IRS can assess the tax directly to the partnership, so the partnership pays the tax. Now, the reason why this is problematic for new partners, John, for example, is because he came in as a partner in this partnership. Now the money's coming out in the current period, 2020, so he's beneficially fronting some of this tax. but he wasn't even a partner in the prior year, right? In 2019, he wasn't a partner in the company, so he feels a little cheated, right? He's thinking, well, this applies to a prior year. I had nothing to do with this. Why is it coming out of my paycheck? And he's right. And so this is also one of the big reasons why electing out of the regime is likely more beneficial to both existing and future partners that might come in and out of the partnership. Now, large partnerships and partnerships with ineligible partners just can't elect out of this. And the limitation does make sense because the IRS wants to go after large companies and just collect the tax directly rather than have that cumbersome task of chasing partnerships with 500 partners for taxes owed, right? It just doesn't. It's not practical for them, and it's makes it much more difficult to collect taxes owed. So let's I'll come back to these 2 points after, but let's go over to the B-2 and have a look at how this works. So in this partnership, we have 3 partners. We have John Smith, XYZ Corp Inc., and then Fake ABC Group LLC. So for all the eligible partners, you have to list them here in Part 1, and if you have more than 15, then you have there's a continuation page in Part 4. But in this case, we just got the 3. So we got John, he's an individual, so code I. XYZ Corp Inc. is a C Corp, so we have code C. And then Fake ABC Group LLC is a partner, and they're an S corporation, right? So they're code S for S Corp. And that's permitted. You can have an S Corp as an eligible partner and still make this opt-out election. Now, what's important with the S Corps, though, is you need more information. In Part 2, when you have an S Corp shareholder, you need to list ultimately who are the shareholders in that S Corp. So in this company here, Fake ABC Group LLC, we list our S Corp there. We have to list all the shareholders in that company. So we have Jane Doe, John Doe, we put their social security numbers and the type of shareholder, it's an individual. And that's important because there's a look-through here, right? This has to be a partnership with 100 or fewer partners. So even though we have 3 direct partners, when you have S-Corps, you look through and include all those beneficial owners towards that 100. So if we scroll down to the bottom here, when we see the total number of K-1s required to be issued, we have 3 listed in Part 1, but in Part 2 here, we have the 2 beneficial owners of the S-Corp. So in total, there's going to be 5. Right, and as it states here, note, if line 3 is more than 100, we have a problem, right? The partnership cannot make this election. So when you have S corporation partners in a partnership and you're making this opt-out election, be careful to check to see how many shareholders are within that entity. If it's too many and you go over the limit, then you can't do this. Okay, so that's the B-2, pretty straightforward. Again, there's a continuation sheets further on down the form, but in this case, if you have a closely held company with just a handful of partners, you can keep it all within Part 1 and 2. Now, the other point to note is how you complete Schedule B. So Schedule B here, question 25 asks, is the partnership electing out of the centralized audit regime? Of course, in this case, we are saying yes, right? And then as it notes here, if yes, you must complete the B-2, and that's what we just went over. And to the total number of K-1s that are going out, so we've got 5 there. And then designate who the partnership representative is there. In this case, it's the first partner, John Smith. Okay, so let's go back to the slide really quickly just to follow up with these 2 last points here. So because of the centralized opt-out election, partnership and LLC agreements should be updated to reflect these new issues, right? So in some partnership agreements I've seen drafted in a way where it prevents the partnership or the LLC from adding a member that is ineligible, because the partnership wants to be sure that they can elect out every single year, and so they limit who can come in and out of the partnership if you're ineligible. So for example, there might be a provision that says we will not allow any entities that are taxed as a partnership to come in because they're going to be ineligible. Okay, and then there's similar language that could be drafted for the S-Corp issue if the S-Corp has too many shareholders. That puts them over the limit. Now, for the partnerships that are already big, so they're either over the 100 partner limit, or if they're in the position where they have partnerships that are partners in the entity and there's no way around that, the agreement should still be modified to consider these issues such as potential clawbacks or withholding on distributions to cover the taxes. And that's because they're trying to make it as equitable as possible. They don't want to have an audit where the IRS can audit the partnership, several years back, and then now you have new partners in and old partners that have left that are either getting, they're getting, if a partner left, they're getting the benefit of not having to pay the tax, or if you have a new partner coming in, they're effectively getting hosed, right? They're picking up the tax bill. And so the partnership agreements can be drafted to try to address those issues and alleviate that kind of inequality that might happen in a partnership context. Okay, so that covers it for the B2. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.